All right. I am going to mute everybody, and then when I have questions, I'll unmute you, and we'll go through that once again. But we have a lot to talk about today, so welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So the first thing we want to talk about is the fact that we're going over the solar plexus chakra. And each class, we talk about one of the chakras as the main subject point, but we break it down to so many little bits and pieces, whether it's the physical, the metaphysical, the spiritual, the mental, because it's all those pieces combined within our chakra that allows us that opening and unwinding to occur so that we can let go of things and bring new things in. And the more that we learn about each one of the chakras in a different way, in a different sense, the more that we are able to connect deeper within ourselves with our own process with our chakra system. Because you'll notice that each time we shave a piece off of our healing, there's deeper layers that we keep going towards that makes us the true authentic of who we are. And I think it's important that we realize and we take into account that the solar plexus chakra is super important for the who you are, the sense of self, that feeling of body, mind, here I am, who am I, how do I project to the world, how do I receive from the world, what am I looking at in the world, and how can I better expand myself? How can I heal those pieces within myself and actually allow a better sense of connection within myself? Because the solar plexus has the transformational power for the body and mind to process matter into energy. So when we begin to understand that and take that into a reality sense and not such like a, oh, this is fantasy over here. No, this is actually happening. We can really do this. But in order to do this, we have to take that practice. And once we practice, the better we get at becoming stronger within ourselves so that we can notice where we are within ourselves and also how to stop ourselves from holding ourselves back from those points of who we are. And so it's really important to start to understand the solar plexus chakra, break it down a little bit, and then really get into the nuts and bolts of everything. So the thing I want to know is, how are you feeling about your sense of being and well-being within your solar plexus chakra? So when you're looking at your solar plexus chakra, you want to see that in your imbalance, you're going to have healthy boundaries. You're going to have a strength of willpower and assertiveness within your life. You're going to stand your own power and boost the stamina and know-how and know when enough is enough and when to push to that next level. So when you're in that balanced state, it just kind of feels good. And so you keep going into that feel-good space. But so often we can become unbalanced right away and without even realizing that it's happening to us. And so some of the signs of imbalance in our solar plexus chakra is noticing frequency of apologizing. If you're constantly apologizing to everybody, then you have to take a step back and wondering what it is that you are looking at yourself as saying you're doing something wrong when maybe you're really not. But the thing is you're not feeling so secure within yourself. It always comes back to that confidence and worthiness thing. And it really manifests itself into the solar plexus chakra. So when you're forcing your ideas on others, that is a form of feeling imbalance within the solar plexus. Maybe you're feeling very passionate about something, and maybe you really think that everybody should be listening and hearing you to the point where you are almost making somebody feel bad for doing it the way that they're doing it. And so that could be a parenting thing, that can be a political thing, that could be like the way that your neighbor is doing things, to the, it could be your friends and how they're doing things and the way that they're reacting. This is a very difficult time for everybody when it comes to, understanding the right ways of doing things in your comfort level during Corona. And so sometimes we can get in an idea, take it with us and run with it to the point where we're kind of over obsessing about it. We don't let it go. And so those are those imbalances that we can feel with the solar plexus chakra being out of alignment. Also procrastination. always thinking I will be done tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow. When that happens, you're starting to feel a little bit of uneasiness. And also the difficulty of looking on after your own welfare. When you're having a difficulty looking after yourself, but you're tending to see everybody else is doing their things wrong, these are the times when you have to take a step back and realize you're doing something that maybe isn't very comfortable for you, but maybe it isn't comfortable for others, but maybe you are so hypersensitive to whatever is in front of your face that it's causing discomfort within your solar plexus. So these are the things that we really have to come and become aware of. Also, the feeling of this nervousness or this exhaustion or this feeling of just not feeling good enough. So your personal power, it involves risk of working with this energy center, and it gives you the power to face life and its challenges. And it's about not being afraid to be accountable for your own actions. So here I am starting to look and say, okay, what can you change within yourself to help your solar plexus become a little bit more vibrant in its energy, more balanced in itself, and a more comfortable, calm place within the solar plexus? So the thing is that we can hold negative emotions here in our solar plexus. This is where childhood traumas set in. This is where we remember these old things and we keep it there. And they become slivers within that energetic bundle. Because you got to understand, the way that I like to explain a chakra is it's basically understanding that we are in some kind of roadway. So we're in this intersection, and if you're going in a city and there's many different intersections, going through New York City and trying to go to the Throgs Neck or the Whitestone Bridge or the GW, you have to go all these different ways to get to that one area. And so what happens in the solar plexus is there's all this beautiful energy just guiding the information from the crown of the head back down. We're absorbing the energy from the earth, going up into the heavens, grabbing our 8th chakra, bringing it down within us, and nourishing our energetic body. And so those energy centers are those vortexes where we are accepting and giving the energy. And so in those areas, what happens is the blockages occur. And I know you've heard it a million times, but okay, what do I have to say in order for us to kind of realize that we have to change things within ourselves in order for those blockages to go away? We can't expect anybody in our outside world to change those blockages for us. Those are things that we have to go within ourselves and to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm still holding on to? For instance, lately I have been carrying around a lot of anger. And it's funny because in my process with anger, I go to judgment first and then anger. So there's something that's just nudging me. I am not completely balanced in something that I am trying to figure out in myself. And so what I'm doing is I am giving myself that awareness that there's something coming up for me. I need to recognize what it is. And I'm seeing that I'm getting angry very often. So that's a trigger for me that something in my energy system is just not balanced correctly. Something's triggering my judgment. Something's triggering my feeling of anger, and I need to go within myself to find out where that is. And a lot of times, because of my own childhood, the trauma is coming up. I am learning how to release it. I've released a lot of my throat chakra, and so now it just seems like, okay, here, this class is coming up again, Desiree, I need to learn how to deal with this, so this information is coming up for me as well as for you guys so that we can all learn from this stuff. And so that's the thing you got to understand about our chakras is it's ever balancing. There's this ebb and flow always happening. And each experience as we grow will change the way we feel. Maybe we get imbalanced because we were expecting something to happen the way it does. And it kind of snowballs into this, okay, I feel imbalanced. But it doesn't mean that we stay there forever. We just have to flip the switch and get us back to balance. And so that is why it's super important to figure out how to find that within ourselves. So that is something that you have to start asking yourself is, are you becoming vulnerable enough within yourself to open up those channels that are very deep within our chakra system that causes us to have those triggers? Did you understand what I said? Because in order to really touch these chakras, we have to become vulnerable.
Can you repeat that again?
Yeah,
What you said.
So are you willing to be vulnerable enough to touch these pieces within your chakra system that are really deep within yourself that are causing these blockages? Because that's where we start to have to look at, well, okay, what is it I'm holding on to? Well, typically within the solar plexus chakra, people hold on to shame. So it's the old stories that we're repeating within ourselves that we have not forgiven ourselves for the reasons why those things happen to us. So we're constantly within a deep pattern within ourselves, because you got to understand, I'm going to go physiology for a minute. When we're in utero, we start with tiny little cells that break apart until we finally get to the part where cells become tissue. And the first tissue that really comes around us is the fascia. So our fascia is as old as we are. And that fascia grows, and it grew and it grows, the heart goes around, and then the fascia is around the heart. And then all of a sudden the lungs are formed, and the fascia forms around the lungs. And each part of our body physically is formed, and fascia wraps around and holds it into place and secures it. But when we are tense within our system as a child, in utero, before we come out into the world, trauma can come into our fascia. And so when fascia has trauma, what ends up happening is it takes that and freezes that emotional time within that tissue. And so when it does that, we are carrying around old stuff, right? And so some of this is physical stuff. Some of it isn't emotional and mental stuff, but just a memory of a time. But in that memory, we still bring up the emotion. Just like you can probably remember a really good time that you had, one of the best times you've ever had in your life. You probably remember it so well that you can bring this heartfelt feeling to that memory, right? Can you guys remember something that has happened to you in your life where you could actually feel that joy again? Like, oh my God, that was I remember my wedding and I just have this joy. And that is a feeling I will always carry about my wedding, and I carry that as a memory. I probably have cellular memory of that day because I was smiling. My breath was full. I could feel the love from everybody. So there's a cellular memory to that. And it's beautiful and wonderful. And so that is something I will want to keep within myself. And that isn't trauma. That isn't bad. And so when I go to love and joy, I think of those moments and I bring out more love and joy. So that's how I can stoke my fire of love and joy. But there's also the sad times that come in that we hold on to. And those are the things that we have to practice letting go of the emotional sensation that we put towards those memories, so that it no longer becomes a painful experience. The first day of kindergarten, I don't know if you guys remember that day or not, but for a lot of children, it was a very scary time for them. So it was scary to the point where they were probably holding on to mommy's hand, feeling afraid to walk into that door, holding their breath, squeezing their pelvic floor, and causing a memory of fear about their first day of school. And so whether we remember that, I just felt something from somebody there. So somebody might have had that experience without even realizing that you carry that around. And so that is something to understand about our bodies. So even though you're physically grown, first grade's not that big a deal, kindergarten's not that big of a deal, but for some reason, somewhere, some along the way, you may be still carrying a little bit of that feeling with you because it was terrifying for you. It was scary for you. And it was a memory that you're holding on to. And so when we think about that in terms of our body holding on, it's called somatic emotion. It's our body holding on to emotion. And so that's why when we're meditating, we feel tingles and we let things go. Sometimes we cry because we're touching that energetic piece of the memory and we're letting it go. We don't have to remember the moment that we got that fear, but we do have to start going to that fear place and letting it go. And giving us and replacing it with the strength of realizing that fear really doesn't have a hold on me like it used to. Because as time goes on, we can choose to not let that fear affect us as much. But obviously, the more intense the feeling, the stronger the connection emotionally it's going to have with our bodies. So those are things that we have to really begin to understand within ourselves, is that energetically, we can start to go there within ourselves and start to let go of those emotional tendencies. But to do that, we have to break down walls of vulnerability to go there. Because as soon as we get to that shame wall, that's a barrier. Like as soon as we start to feel shame for that emotional feeling or tendency of going there, it's uncomfortable. And what do we do when we're uncomfortable is we want to run away. We want to get away. We want to push away. We don't want to be a part of that, because when we go there, it's so intense physically, emotionally. We don't even know because there's so many things going on. Most of the time we want to call it anxiety or depression. One or the other. We want to label it something because there's so much going on within our system that our brain gets like, okay, we're hot wired and we're done. We just shuts off. The brain just goes into this panic mode. And then we no longer go to that vulnerability. We go into that shame, and then we go into that process over and over again. So it's about breaking those processes so that we can open up and allow ourselves a better experience. All right. So a lot of this is also connected to our thoughts, because it's our thoughts and our emotion what creates the reality around us. Correct? Wouldn't you agree with that? So we have to begin to understand this a little bit better and within our thoughts. But before we go any further with that, I really need to express something about expectations. I had a conversation with Georgie because I think when we go into creating, what happens is I've been talking a lot about expectations and how to let go of expectations, but I have gotten more clarity, and I want to really expand this a little bit more about expectations so that we can have a better understanding about creating the law of attraction. Because when you really think about the future, we have to have some kind of visualization. We have to have some kind of fantasy, some kind of dream, okay? And in that case and sense, we are creating expectations about how we want to create the world to look, all right? So, but the difference being is there's a difference between being expecting from expecting a person to do something for your vision to occur, versus expecting the energy to create a scenario to arise within your life so that that can occur within you. Does that make sense? Did I say that right? Darby, I know that we talk about this a lot. And so I really want to, so I was talking to Georgie because I was like, okay, let's say somebody wants to sell their house and they're expecting their house to be sold. And so they go into fantasy mind about how they're going to sell their house. And she's like, yeah, well, you have to go there in the law of attraction. You have to fantasize it, visualize yourself there, get yourself in that frame of mind, put yourself there, and you will get there, right? But a lot of times people don't get there. So they're like, well, I did all the things you said, but I'm still not there. Okay. And so then I had to elaborate on this. Okay, well, there must be something to do with expectations. So their expectations were too high, or they were thinking in a terms that wasn't correct for them. And she's like, well, if you're expecting this person to do this first before you can get this, then you can't visualize, I'm going to visualize Jason building me a house. Well, now I'm putting him and expecting him to do that. Now, that's not fair because that's not maybe in his wheelhouse to do that in his lifetime. So with me, I have to visualize and create for my world only. I can't create for the worlds of everybody else around me. I can only create my world. And so that is something that that we have to understand, is that we can't expect others to create our world. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions about that? No? Okay, so the other thing is to understand now that when we are creating from a law of attraction, that when we do start creating visualization and we are visualizing the world around us the way that we see fit. For me, it's my lake house. I visualize the lake house. I see the lake house. I'm feeling the lake house, right? So when I'm there in that visualization, it's just my creation. I'm creating the dock. I'm creating the house. I'm creating walking down. I'm creating the way I'm walking into the water. I'm creating the open scenery of the beautiful water and the sunshine glaring down, hitting my face. All of that is happening. And if I don't have that, and that doesn't come to me, then I am not lining up with my creative powers. Okay? And so this is the next step. Is in the solar plexus chakra, we are the creative beings. So when I ask you who you are, the first response is spirit having a human experience, right? The second, you're the creator. You are the creator. So when you can really bring this into your mindset, you can start recognizing how much potential that you really have, all right? So what I want to do is talk to you about Deepak Chopra's law of karma, cause and effect, right? We have heard karma's a bitch, karma this, karma that, right? So, but let's really talk about this a moment as far as what does that mean? Karma is conscious choice. It's consciously and unconsciously making choices in the beginning. That's how we make choice. Is us choice makers there's choices that we make that we're consciously aware of making, and then there's choices that we just automatically make on our own. We just go about the day without even thinking about it. When you wake up in the morning, you choose to walk into the bathroom first thing and pee. I mean, yes, your body is telling you have to do that, but that's become such a routine that you just know peeing right away when you get up. Or maybe it's pouring that cup of coffee. You are choosing to pour that cup of coffee, but because it's become such a routine, sometimes we forget how many choices we actually have on a daily basis. And so it is important for us to recognize within those choices, are we choosing with worthiness, or are we choosing with the feeling of suffering? I must suffer first, and then I can choose this. I haven't suffered enough here, so I have to suffer this much, and then I choose this, this, and this. So everything that is happening in this moment in your life is happening because of the choices that you've made in the past. So it's now important to realize that we must start taking a step back and consciously making more choices that are going to be positively affecting our future self. And in order to choose those choices, it's about mindfully choosing the things that are good for you mentally. It's those thoughts. The first step in choices are the thoughts that you choose. And the thoughts that you choose to think about, the thoughts you choose to express, the thoughts you choose to react towards. And it's really taking a step back and witnessing the choices that you're making right now from unconscious into conscious, making that witness and being empowered by it. Become empowered by your choices. Because the thing is that If you've always chosen to make a choice based on your worthiness, but your worthiness has always been a little bit low, but now I'm asking you to choose with a great big worthiness, it's a lot different now, isn't it? It's a lot different of the choices you're going to make. You're going to be confidently making those choices. You're not going to be worried about what's next, because when you put good things out there, good things come back to you. But the thing is that you can put great things about everybody else. But remember, you are the creator of your life. So those choices have to be based on your life's choices. What makes you happy? What is going to draw the energy towards you with this information, right? And so it's really about starting to recognize what you've been conditioned in your choices and taking a step back and thinking, maybe you need to choose differently. Sort of like when you look in the mirror and the first thing you look at, maybe you're obsessed with one little spot on your face that you constantly look at, or you're obsessed with your hair a certain way, or you're obsessed with one little thing about you that you keep saying over and over again that you need to stop doing. Well, here it is. This is where you take that conscious choice to make a different decision on how you're going to express yourself in that moment. Wow, isn't that a lot that I just threw at you? Because honestly, when we are observers, we're not judging. We're not putting shame or doubt on ourselves, because we're really just watching the show. We're sitting back with some popcorn being like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. That's pretty cool. So the first question that you're going to ask yourself when you're making choice is, A, what are the consequences of the choices that I'm making? What are your consequences? And then the second question is, will the choice that I'm making bring happiness to me and those around me? So this is great for people when they have hard decision-making skills, like they just don't know how to make a decision about anything, or they really use too much logic in their decision-making. If we were to go into our logic brain and make decisions, where do you think the information is going to come from? Go ahead, somebody answer. Go ahead, Darby. Tell me, where's it going to come from if you make a logical decision? From your head. Exactly.
My mind, my previous experience.
Your previous experience. Logic is previous experience mind stuff. Logic. So here we go. Here's a big one. So here we are, logically thinking, well, I've been taught my whole entire life to use logic to make decisions. Since school, I've always made decisions because what logically makes sense is what we're supposed to do. But there are so many decisions to be made on a daily basis. How can we logically put our brain into every one of those decision-making processes? So then, how do we decide which ones go from logic and which one's instinct and which one comes through spirit? Right? So that's a big question to super ask yourself for a moment. Is, okay, there are decisions that have to be made, and there are 3 different places that I can go within myself. I can go logically, I can go emotionally, I can go spiritually. And realistically, if you really sit back and think about it, what are my consequences and how does it affect others and myself? If you think about it and it makes you feel good, then that's what you should be doing. But if you in your logical brain are like, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Then you are using brain work and not your creative source to do the work. Does that make sense? It's about understanding that, are we using our brain or are we using our spirit to guide us? The step to intuition is making sure that we are using our inner guidance, our inner tools within ourselves to make those choices. We want spirit guiding us. The brain has done enough. We've seen enough. We've trusted enough. But it takes true faith to break free from the idea that we need to use our logical brains to make decisions. Because sometimes logic isn't, well, all the time logic isn't using our psychic sense that we have about ourselves. We all are psychic. We all are bringing in this electromagnetic current. It's all coming towards us. Every single one of us are psychic. Every single one of us has the ability to know what path we should be on at any given moment. It's our fears, it's our worries, it's our doubts. Those are the things that are holding us back. It's our shame, it's our past experiences. Those are the things that make us choose on logic instead of what feels good, right? And the thing is that, like, the idea is to just make an idea of that you have an infinite amount of choices available to you at any second of every day. You can create happiness everywhere around you. But when you make the choice, the result is going to form behind your behavior. So if you choose that you need to suffer before you can have a wonderful, brilliant life, well, that's going to happen. Because that is what you've chosen as what would be right for you. That doesn't mean it's right. It just means that this is what you're going to choose. And so that is important to really take a step back, because you got to really understand that we want to break free from our old thought patterns. And so sometimes we have to be uncomfortable, and sometimes we have to walk a different path than we ever have in our whole entire life. And in order to walk that different path, you have to have faith. So here's what happens when we're creating. And we're walking in spirit, we're listening to spirit, we're walking in this path, and you're feeling good. And then all of a sudden, something in the real world comes up. I use quotations when I say real world, because the illusion that we are participating in becomes this world that we think is super real, that we block ourselves from the energy of creating. We'll block ourselves from that creative force if we think we know what's happening ahead of us with our logical brain. So let's say that you're cruising right along, you're doing awesome, everything is fantastic and wonderful, and all of a sudden, you know, you're just like, I just can't do this. I can't go there. Or let's for instance, okay, I got an idea. Let's say you decide that you want to go back to school, and you're like, you think that inside of you really want to go back to school, and you're starting to take the course, and you're sitting there the first day, you're like, this is exactly what I want to do. Oh my God, I want to do this. This makes me so excited. This is fantastic. And so you're sitting there, you're doing great, and you're absorbing the information, and school's doing fantastic, and you're just into it, and then you go to hang out with a bunch of friends you've been friends with for a long time, and you say that, hey, I'm taking this course, I'm super excited about it, I think this is going to be a great path for me, and one of your friends is like, yeah, but what about last time you took that course? That course didn't do you well at all. And then you sit there and you're like, shit, that's right. That course didn't do anything for me. Oh my God, it put me into so many different distresses, and oh my God, I don't know. And it brings up all of these thoughts and feelings about going back to school. And now instead of having this excitement and this, woohoo, I'm excited, you go to your logical brain. And then your logical brain puts all these thoughts into your head, and you start creating like bad grades, creating doubts, uncertainty on whether you're doing the right thing. And then all of a sudden, all of these things start happening in your life, and you're starting to question everything that you originally thought you were supposed to do, because you started creating from your logical brain. And so that logical brain is still bringing karma. Karma's happening. Choices are happening. And so you're choosing to think your thoughts and guide yourself through your thoughts. And so all of a sudden, you're creating what you're asking for. Is the doubt, the worries, the fears, the inconsistencies. Inconsistencies happen because then you go back and you're like, no, I know what I felt was real. And you jump back on there and you're like, yes, this is it. I'm going back. I feel so good. Because while you're in the class, you are feeling joy just emanating. Oh my God, this is like, I was meant for this. This was the joy that I was supposed to bring into the world. But what happens is when you're in it and you're feeling it and you're feeling fantastic and everything is wonderful, and then another person starts throwing doubt in you and brings back that whole, oh, remember that one thing that happened last time, that one thing, and then you just go back down that rabbit hole again. Do you see how your creative forces, you get so stop and go, you never get that flow? That happens in our body all the time. That's why we do cranial sacral or energy work. We do the energy work in the cranial sacral because there's so much stop and go all the time that the body becomes sluggish within the energetic system. You create blockages because you had all this energetic burst, and then you were like, whoa, stop. Oh, wait, too much, can't do it. And then you get that little burst and you push along a little bit, and then it pushes back at you. And then eventually you're like, man, I'm kind of feeling kind of sore. I'm kind of lethargic. I don't think I know what I'm doing anymore. I'm stuck. And it's all because we've been in our heads too long. You're in your head. You're thinking too much. You're thinking thoughts that are of potential outcomes, but none of them are creating the fantasy that you truly want. Because I would have to say that in our childhood, somewhere along the way, somebody told you to grow up. Stop being in the head so much. Stop fantasizing. Stop being in la la land. And so we started to think that being in la la land or being fantasy world is a bad thing. And it's really not. Because that's where we do our creative juices and flows and get ourselves going and ignite this law of attraction. Because I'm sure you've heard of The Secret. I'm sure you've seen how we've heard law of attraction for years now. And so what happens is people jump off the bandwagon when they don't see results. And so the key is to realize the results come from our own thoughts and feelings. It comes from us. But here is where it gets tough, is when we touch shame. So let's say we're in school, that school example, right? And so in this, you're like joy, and then fear, and then joy, and then fear, and then joy, and then fear. And you're in this fear, and all of a sudden you start feeling shame. Because you've gotten yourself right back to this point that feels really familiar. Because you've gone through joy and fear so many times, stuff is going to come up from the past because you're bringing yourself right back there. Because logically, we're trying to make decisions based on our past. So now our bodies are going there, our energy is going there, and we're starting to drum up shame. And when we drum up shame, it's uncomfortable. And so what do? First reaction? Let's push that down. We don't want to deal with that. No, I'm good. I want to go back to joy. But those are the reasons why we have to come up and bring that up, is so we allow ourselves to let it go. We have to be willing to understand and let go. And the only way to do that is to take ourselves in those vulnerable, honest places and say, am I in my head right now? Am I forcing myself into decisions based on what other people are thinking, based on what my past experiences are, or based on like what somebody one time said to me that I wasn't good enough for that? See all the things that come up against us when we try to change who we are? Because all of us are trying to change right now. We're trying to go to that most truly authentic part of who we are. We're really trying to do that. We are trying to get there. We're trying to be there. We're trying to experience that place of oneness. And really, to get to that energetic soul being, we have to to let ourselves step away from all those rules. You know, because when we go into the soul, those rules don't exist in that space. When we're in the fifth dimension in soul's realm, there are no time. It's not 3D. Time is not linear. Space is not linear. Like, those things don't occur on that level of existence. So when you're trying to speak to spirit with your human self, we have to use our receptors to get to spirit. We have to use our receptors to connect to spirit in order to go to soul self. We can't go to our logical human self to go there. So that's why we have to meditate. We have to work on ourselves. We have to go to those places and start to look at those different choices that we have to make in order to make ourselves go to a different place within our world and our creative self. So the real big thing is the shame that can bring out fear of being ordinary, that you're not extraordinary, that you're not enough, that you're not lovable, that you don't belong, that you don't cultivate a sense of purpose. That is a really great big fear that a lot of people tend to hold on to. And it is super important to recognize that that is just the human self holding on to that. It is just a story. Hey, Sully, shush. Sorry, Sully's just barking. My pug is barking about nothing. Oh my goodness. We're talking about spirits and he's going crazy now. It's not, that's about normal here from my life here. That's all good. It's okay. So here is the big one. I don't know if you heard me or not, because I kind of went off as Sully kept agreeing with me. We can bring out fear of being ordinary. Fear of being ordinary is a true thing, because everyone wants to be extraordinary, because we have the self. Remember, it comes back to the self, right? But I'm not talking about the self, this human self anymore. I'm talking about the spirit, this ray of light that drops down into this human body, that guides us on our journey and helps us to where we need to be. We have it here. We have it for us. And we have to allow ourselves to break free from the fear. Because honestly, there's so much of you that you don't even realize is there. That is the pieces that we have to bust through to open up to. But in order to do that, I can't get there through here. That is not the direction to get to spirit. Here, your heart has it. Your heart has the answers. Because really and honestly, when you think about it, it is the strongest electromagnetic current. And we have these neurotransmitters in our heart, the same ones that go into our brain. And we have neurotransmitters in our gut. So these neurotransmitters, they create that current talking to each other all the time. So our gut, our heart, and our brain speaking beautifully with one another. And our heart is the receptor, the big one. It is the big receiver for information. So we have to continuously create a positive vibe to allow ourselves to create and understand. Claudia. All right, I'm going to text Claudia because her screen keeps freezing and it's just, my screen isn't freezing, correct? You guys are good? Okay. All right, so Claudia, I don't know if you can hear me. Yeah, I just want to let you know your internet is kind of wonky tonight. So I just wanted to let you know that, okay? So I have it recorded, so I'll send you the whole thing. Right after we're done, I'll just send it right to you just so you can have it. Anybody else who wants it too, I'll have this recording as well. I just think it's important to understand, yeah, that, you know, with the way that things are with our internet connection sometimes. And plus we're talking spirit, and as soon as we talk spirit, you know, It happens. It does happen. So it's really important to bring yourself into this awareness of find gratitude. Your gratitude is the key that we really need to bring ourselves into. See, as soon as I talk gratitude, Sully's barking again. So once you find gratitude in your life, we want to magnify that in every ounce of your being. So it is so important every day to find something and be grateful for it. It can be like, oh, I'm so grateful for the sunshine right now. I'm so grateful for my breath. I'm so grateful for just where I am right now. And that way, the universe is here healing you. It's hearing where you are, who you are, where you're going, what you want, and it keeps you in that vibration of peace and love and joy. It is a very powerful tool to use, because honestly, this is where we struggle the most, is that we start to think of the lack that we have. I don't have this, and I haven't received this yet, and this hasn't come to me yet. And so we get so wrapped up in what the universe hasn't provided for us yet that we forget about these little tiny things just being here right now. That is the gratitude that we have and the expectation of our creation to form. So it's like, so Georgie and I were talking about expectation with love, so you create the idea of loving that person, right? So I created Jason. I love him. I have this immense feeling of connection to him, but that man has free will. And so that man is going to do things on his own, and I have to just be willing to accept that he's going to have his own world that he's going to be creating at the same time. So I can't have expectations on his creation, on his world. I can only create for my world. So when he chooses to move a bookshelf or changes the room around, and he does that without telling me, and I walk in the house and the whole room is all upside down from what I expected it when I walked in, I have to just be accepting for him for who he is. I just love him for who he is, for being that person. I could be mad and expect him to tell me when he's going to do things like that, or I can give him a rule book of all the things he has to do in order to make me happy. But those are not really fair. That's not going to bring me joy. That's just bringing him a laundry list of things that I want him to do, but not ever once looking at what I need me to do. Because the expectation is now bringing the accountability to myself. And that's where we need to bring it in. If your world around you is not the way that you want it, your fantasy, your creation is about only your life. And when there's other people involved in your life, this is the hardest thing, is breaking the expectations of others. Letting them be them, even when it might not be what we think is the right thing for us. And that is a very difficult place to be, because we want to feel like we're helping. I'm helping that person. When I see them do something, I'm helping them by telling them to do that. And then when they're not doing that, we get mad at them for not listening, but that's not fair. They're not ready. Just because we can see it doesn't mean they can. We're not carrying around their baggage and their stuff and their feelings and all their pain that they've been carrying around. We don't know what they're going through. All we can do is go through the stuff that we're going through right now. And if that doesn't line up with that person, we have to take a step back and walk away for a little while. Take a step back, gain your strength again, because if it's affecting you emotionally and physically and logically in too many ways, it's not helping you, and it's just making you unhealthy. So when those people are hurting you in your life, it's time to take a step back and find your balance again. Because the judgment that you're putting on them is judgment on yourself. What did I do wrong? How did I do this? Why didn't I do it better like this? Or I've done something. I created this in them. I did this to you. No, they didn't do anything to you and you've never done anything to them. But it's really, really important to understand that as a creator, that you must create and create a fantasy. That's why it's so wonderful when we do these vision boards, and I've talked about vision boards in the past, and I really think that it's important to really think about creating one, because you get fantasy, but I want fantasy with yourself, who you are, like the way that you want your world to see. Like I am with my lake house. I can visualize my lake house. I don't know where it is quite yet. I just visualize the lake, and I have these big windows and I can see the lake, and I'm just at peace with the water and the mountains, and the feeling as though I am in this safe place where I can be myself and find my joy. And that really is what I feel when I bring my abundance to myself, because obviously in order to have a lake house, I got to have money, right? So I want to draw abundance to myself, right? So there's this thing that you got to think about. Now, I'm not creating people to come into my life to create the abundance. I'm not creating clients as my abundance. I'm creating abundance to come in, and those clients are my abundance. So I am no longer putting expectation on people entering. I'm putting expectation on my abundance being there right now. Do you see the difference on how we have to really think our thoughts? It really becomes very mindful, right? But that's what meditation is all about, is taking a step back and being more mindful of the way we think our thoughts. And if we get into a situation where we're butting up against something that doesn't make sense, calling somebody and being like, hey, this doesn't really make sense to me. Can you explain it to me a little better? And that's actually why, like when I talked to Georgie this morning about expectation, because I know a lot of people have questions about this, because it's, how do I create the world around me without this expectation? But I want to have fantasy because I want to create with visualization, but how do I do that without expectation? So obviously we don't create a time limit, and obviously we don't put it on people themselves. I am just creating this abundant feeling. So I'm just bringing that awareness to this abundance that I have, this feeling of never enough, this free flowing, effervescent flow of abundance that is just always coming towards me. And so when I feel that abundance coming towards me, how it comes to me, let the universe give me that. Signs and symbols. And they're going to do that. The universe is going to do that by the energy it puts towards me. And each choice I make is a better direction towards something that I love, something that makes me happy. If this doesn't make me happy, I'm going to walk the other way. But do you understand how in our solar plexus chakra, it's really about you, and not people around you. It's about you. Once you have mastered you and your wisdom, then you can start to recognize the way that the universe is speaking to you, how it comes towards you, whether it's audio, whether it's visual, whether it's sentient, or whether it's just this empathic sense. So you got to understand that our psychic sense is going to come towards us in all different ways, depending on who you are. So in order for you to really be in tune to that psychic ability, we have to break down our vulnerability and recognize the ways of the pain of letting go of that pain, touching that space, realizing that this isn't where we need to be anymore. We don't need to know how we got it. We just need to know that it's time to let it go. And it will maybe take a year. It might take a month. But whenever you're ready, it's time to go. And you just let it go. And you're ready for it. But the practice is our mental, our thoughts. It's deciding how to meditate in a way where we're able to observe our thoughts without reaction. So when I start to worry in my mind, I'm like, oh, look at, I'm worrying in my mind. Let's take a step back and not do that again. So you start to be more aware of your thoughts. For me, for instance, I was realizing that my reaction to a lot of things is anger. And so I took a step back and said, why am I so angry? And it was because I was judging people's reactions or non-reaction to things. And so I recognized, like, holy cow, I am reacting, I'm angry, but it's really the judgment. So who am I judging? Me. Why am I judging myself? Haven't quite figured that one out yet. It will come up. It will. I know it will, hopefully sooner than later. But when it does, I will know that this was what it was. But the idea is watching me go through this process for a second. You're seeing me with my triggers. Okay, so I have to be more mindful of what the judgments are within myself. So when it comes up, I can observe it and not have a reaction to it of anger. Do you see? It's a thought of judgment. The reaction is anger. When I want to think of love, my reaction is love. When I think of the things that make me grateful, my reaction is gratitude. So it's letting go of shame and getting into that space of true love, true feeling of passion, and knowing that you truly deserve to be your own creator. So do you guys have any questions or comments? Anything you want to say? Anything you want to clarify? Anything like that? Anybody?
I got a lot of clarity last week.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did get a lot of clarity. And that's what we're trying to do right now is that idea of this is the practice. Because when I say things, you guys are having emotional reactions to the things I'm saying. And even though you might have heard it a million times, the more ways I can say it, because remember, I pulled in that karma, the law of karma. And it all is what you put out there is what you get in. And every thought you have is what's going to come towards you. And so it's super important to recognize that. It all comes down to meditation, thoughts, and feelings. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Anything you want to talk about? Anything that came up for you that you are feeling? No? Cool. Fantastic. There's a lot to think about there, but continuously try to meditate and really begin to see where you are within that space of thoughts and action, thoughts and reaction, thoughts and, okay, where do I need to go in this? So that's where we are right now, because I know for a lot of us, the reacting part is towards other people. They're doing things that we don't maybe approve of, or it could have been done differently. And these are the things that we really need to recognize and not judge. And that it means that maybe we need to take time away from Facebook and social media because it's getting really crazy in there. I think that I was like, I myself have realized that, wow, you can get really sucked into social discussions and you're just like, no, I want to talk about love and joy and peace and feed the hungry, save the poor. That's what I want to do. But these are the things that we have to work on, because you know what? Here's the bottom line. In my belief system, in my ideology, and this is something that I talk a lot about with people, is the fact that we come here with an agreement with all of our souls to be here. So we in our souls, all of us here in our tribe, agreed that in 2020 we're going to meet up and we're going to learn a lot from each other, just to see if we're on the right path within our light working kind of ways in our path, right? And so for the people that have passed on young, for the people that have the diseases, for the people that have to leave us when we're not expecting it, those things happen because of the agreements that we had with one another off this planet, off of this dimension, off of this plane of existence. So it can bring peace to us to know that we all agreed to it. And this is something that's my belief system, but it really does help me even in my own self when it comes to my parents dying. I believe strongly about this because it helps me to understand why my parents had to go. It was the relationship and the agreement that we had before we got here that, okay, you're going to go through this, Desiree, and you're going to have a lot to work on. But you know what, Lori, you're going to be her guide through this all, but on the other side, so that she can touch the other side, so she can bring it towards people so that people can understand and to shift into this higher dimension. So all of this had to happen. Since 2 years old, I came into this world with this whole stuff happening to me, but it was an agreement that I had. I knew what I was getting into. Not my physical, logical brain didn't, but my spiritual soul did. And I accept that. I really do. It's hard sometimes. Like I get upset a lot, okay, yeah. But not like I used to, obviously. I've grown a lot in my grief. But the thing is that the more I can accept something greater, the better I am about dealing with it. Because now I can see the bigger picture. Because the whole goal is to reunite with her eventually. And that's the thing that I'd like to do on this plane first. I'd like her and I to have a conversation 3-dimensional so that we can, she can give me some advice sometimes, and she does, believe me. But these are things to mindfully be aware of and just keep that in mind when we're going through this evolutionary growth that we're going through right now. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about this because I had decided a few days ago that I was going to really concentrate on taking in the spiritual side, taking in what felt right, what was going to be right, what I just felt like doing, and kind of let go of the logical thinking and worrying and doubting kind of thing. And I said, I tell you what, I said to my ego, I'm going to put you aside for a couple of weeks. And I just want to go with this. And the funny thing is since I made the decision, it's like I feel like my ego and those things keep kicking in even more and more and more and more than they were before. And I thought, wait a minute, I just made a decision that I was going to kind of go with what my heart was feeling and what I felt was right. And just I promised myself just 2 weeks to just give myself that. And I keep getting kicked back, and it's like, and I'm realizing it, and I'm aware that it's like, why is this coming up so much more than it was even before?
Yeah.
I give it a bigger jar of cookies. I offer it different cookies. Truly.
You'll know package.
I was like, how about, you want Oreos tonight? Okay, cool. Go take those. Peanut butter blossoms, they're yours. Go ahead, go over there.
I was just so surprised, but I'm thinking maybe that's part of it, is having to kick in and realize how much it's really, really there.
Exactly. It comes down to faith.
Oof.
Faith is a big one. And when we start to realize that faith is what's going to bring us our joy and our peace and our love, because it becomes faith in that spirit in who we are. It's that soul inside of us that we're having faith in, that it is stronger than this human self, that it can guide us to something greater. And when you have that faith in that there it is, that's it. And it's really about trusting your faith. Because the thing is a lot of you might have had a different faith starting out in life. And if you've been taught a different faith starting out in life, and now you're being asked to add this whole great big world of faith, meaning this creator within yourself, the soul within, that you're your own creator, instead of, I need to have this person do it for me, meaning God is doing it. You're allowing the creator within yourself to do it. You're breaking old belief systems. You are actually asking yourself to take your faith and change the definition within faith of what that means. Do you understand the difference? When we're taught faith at a young age, Faith can be a totally religious thing. It becomes a cultural thing in some aspects. And when it becomes into that cultural aspect, we lose the energetic, what it was intended for, that connection with God, because it becomes more about the rules of what we're supposed to do in the culture of our faith. And so when we take a step back, and I'm asking you to bring faith in from a spirituality sense, that's scary for your whole belief system that's based on the rules and logic. So this is where we take the baby steps. And like you said, Darby, just put it in the back seat and go to faith. Go to your heart and say, no, I got this. I really got this. Take a stone, take a crystal, pick a crystal in your collection, and take that while you're walking for the next 2 weeks as your reminder stone. Pick the stone that's going to be your reminder stone. So each time that you start worrying or fearing, you take the stone as a reminder that this is my faith. You're taking a physical object and saying, this is my faith. So it's a reminder, hand, eye, mind, changing your belief about your faith. And this crystal's already got such amazing powers as it is that you're just taking it on with you too. So added benefit. But it's now a totem for you, for your faith. And everyone do that. Everyone take a crystal and take it in your pocket for the next 2 weeks as your faith. So when you start going in ego mode, freaking out, worrying, fearing, doubting, you take your crystal in your hand as this is my faith. As this is with me, I'm okay. And allow the crystal to help you with your faith. It's an energetic being, that crystal. May not speak to you in the sense that you're used to, but it's got that energy that'll be there for you. You guys got that?
Mm-hmm.
Yay. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. I love my tribe. Keep coming, keep joining, keep doing what you're doing, because honestly, you guys are fantastic. You guys got this. You guys got this. Any questions or any comments, go into our Facebook message page because I'd love to see you. All right, guys?
Thank you.
You're
Welcome.
Thanks.
I will see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.